Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Spider-Verse Retrospectives. Well, we're nearing the end of the Venomverse era as I'm calling it, and to kind of round everything out, we got one more miniseries we gotta look at before we can move on to something else. And well, today we're gonna be looking at the actual follow-up to the Venomverse storyline as we take a look at Venomized, the advertised sequel to Venomverse. Now, that basically the only reason I'm actually counting this as part of again the whole Spider-Verse thing is because it's called the sequel to Venomverse. Otherwise, it doesn't really have to do with any multiversal shenanigans. But it does continue the story that we saw in Venomverse, and likewise also from Poison X, which is another reason why I looked at it, because Poison X was kind of like an intermediary story between both of them. So here we are today. But is Venomized worthy of being a follow-up to Venomverse? Well, let's take a look at it and find out. And of course, to kick things off, we gotta take a look at the beginning of the miniseries with Venomized #1. Now, before we get to the plot summary, let's do some minor recaps. So, the Poisons. The Poisons are a race of alien beings who, in their base form, are small, stocky, and well, they look like little walking bones, so to speak. And which, while they do have some form of defenses by utilizing psychic abilities to mislead whoever's looking at them into believing there's someone close to them, they're primarily very weak, and if you could just take a rock to them, they'd be dead. However, it turns out that when one of these little poisons comes into contact with someone who's bonded with a symbiote, they quite literally consume them, absorbing their symbiote into their metabolism and essentially stripping the symbiote of its will, but taking on the symbiote's properties, their powers, their abilities, and so forth. But in order to fuel this process, they need to literally consume the host, which effectively kills the host entirely, but also causes whatever poison touched them to take on the appearance of the host, even gaining their powers and abilities as well. But because of the whole merging process, they're now even more powerful than they were before. As such, in Venomverse, the Poisons had learned of the existence of superpowered individuals in the multiverse, and hoping to become the top dogs, they wound up trying to consume a venomized Doctor Strange because he was the one pulling Venom from across the multiverse, hoping that they could use him to, increase their own ranks. Thanks to the Venom Army, they were able to stop that, and they believed that they had killed the Poisons, but the end of that story revealed that the leader of that sect of Poisons, i.e. Poison Doctor Doom, had escaped, and that there were even more Poisons that were under the thrall of a poison Thanos. Then we get to Poison X, and we soon learn what the Poison's backup plan is. They're just gonna straight up invade the multiverse, and they've now made their way into the Marvel Universe, with Venom and the X-Men, who are off on a rescue mission to save Cyclops' father, encountering a gaggle of poisons that not only consumed a group of bounty hunters, but also, sadly, consumed Jean Grey, as at the time the X-Men were bonded with symbiotes. While Venom and the X-Men managed to escape, they are aware that the Poisons are still out there, and they want to go warn the Earth before they reach there, since Venom knows firsthand that if the Poisons are around, it's going to cause nothing but trouble for everyone if the world that Venomverse took place on was anything to go by. Unfortunately, things are kind of grimmer than we thought, since at the end of Poison X, when Cyclops' father Corsair and his Starjammers returned to the planet Clintar to return the X-Men symbiotes to their homes, they found the entire planet completely vacant, they were able to put two and two together and realize the Poisons kidnapped every single symbiote on this planet, which is where Venomized begins. Because it's time we see what the Poison's getting tongue-tied. We are now going to see what the Poison's backup plan is. And, put simply, if the title of this miniseries is anything to go by, they're just going to make hosts. And the first issue actually begins at the Xavier School for Gifted Mutants, as we see just the various students of the school just, going around, doing their regular thing, just kind of being students, basically. However, as they're walking around, two students, a guy whose powers are that he has eyes all over his body, and a girl who, I don't remember her name. I forgot her name. Let me see if I can find it. I know it's actually said in the first page. What is it? Bling. Her name is Bling. She's like a purple girl. She's like a purple girl with like a bumpy forehead. Basically, they both notice that people are approaching the mansion, and they can't make out any details, but based on the outline of their bodies, they look like the superhero team X-Force, led by Cable, who, if you don't know who Cable is, go watch Deadpool 2. But since it looks like X-Force, iBoy is like, oh, hey guys, what are you doing here? How's it going? the response is that it's a shot to the face as he gets knocked to the ground. And sure enough, yeah, the X-Force that was getting closer to the school, they were poison versions of the X-Force, who with poison Cable immediately letting his teammates know to just start going in and taking people. Of course, Bling immediately goes to Eye-Boy, and she sees what looks like she sees red liquid starting to spread out on the lawn, and she's like, oh shit, are you okay, oh shit? But we see that Eye-Boy is not dead, as he immediately lets out a scream, and, well, it turns out that red stuff ain't blood. It's a symbiote. And sure enough, we cut to the inside of the X-Mansion as we see students just running for the hills. And it's here that the current professor in charge of the school, in this case Kitty Pryde, as she was the leader of the X-Men in the X-Men Gold Book, immediately goes out and wants to know what the hell is going on. And sure enough, she sees the poison X-Force as they just keep shooting at students. Only all of their shots aren't lethal rounds, but they're all symbiotes, and basically any student that they shoot with these rounds ends up getting bonded with a symbiote. Of course, Kitty is wondering what the hell this is all about, but she really doesn't have time she doesn't really have time to wonder about this because, well, these people are meaning to do her students harm, so she assembles the X-Men, which in this case consists of, hold on a second, Colossus. Sorry, I forgot his name, but yeah, Kitty calls the X-Men, which in this case consists of Colossus, Nightcrawler, and, well, Old Man Logan. Yeah, like I mentioned as I mentioned back in Edge of Venomverse number 4, the Old Man Logan, the Wolverine from the Old Man Logan universe was bumming around the main Marvel universe for a time, and I guess he joined the X-Men. Or maybe this is just the regular Wolverine, his hair went white. I don't know. Either way, he's here, and he wants to protect the students. But of course, yeah, X-Force immediately turns their attention to them, as while the X-Men are doing their best to try and disarm members of X-Force and get their weapons away from them, they all start opening fire on them, and with Colossus even protecting Kitty Pryde with his own body. And the end result, Wolverine, Nightcrawler, and Colossus all find themselves bonded to symbiotes. Let me see if I can find the page. Yeah, I won't deny it. Venomized, this team of Venomized X-Men look just as cool as the other team of Venomized X-Men. But yeah, it turns out that the X-Mansion wasn't the only place that was hit by the poisons, as we then cut to New York, as we see the superheroes Hercules and Thor, the Jane Foster Thor for anyone wondering, as they're making their way out of a bar after what I assume was a bender of night drinking. With of course Hercules getting kind of a hangover and just kind of still a little loopy while Thor is doing her best to try and keep him stable. However, despite their inebriated states, they're able to pick up that someone is watching them, and turns out, yep, they're able to detect the poison. So while at first Thor brings down the thunder, so to speak, and manages to zap a couple poisons on an opposite roof, well, it turns out that those poisons were just a diversion. Because as she tries flying up, a poison Hawkeye manages to hit her with an arrow from a windowsill, and sure enough, she ends up getting bonded with a symbiote. With Hercules being hit by a bullet by, I don't want to say Crossbones. I don't know who the other guy is. He has like a white thing on his face. I don't know. Point is, he ends up infecting Hercules, and so these two gods are infected with symbiotes as well, and the poisons pull back. And well, the poisons pull back. We then cut to another part of it. We then cut to Midtown as we see another superhero being targeted by the poisons. And well, you can't have a symbiote story in the main Marvel universe without one person. Venom. But also in some cases you can't have Spider-Man. And sure enough, we see the web slinger as he's duking it out with a poison version of the Punisher, which, by the way, if this poison version of the Punisher is the same Punisher that we saw in Venomverse War Stories, then I find it kind of ironic that it isn't until he became a poison that he finally started doing what his symbiote wanted. But anyway, whatever. Point is, Poison Punisher is trying to open fire on Spider-Man, but Spider-Man being Spider-Man, he's avoiding all of the shots and even manages to disarm him. Unfortunately for Spidey, the Punisher brought grenades, and sure enough, he unloads a bunch of them into Spidey's face, which in turn ends up bonding him with his own symbiote and gives him back the black suit. At this point, the Punisher is ready to just call this a victory, which Spidey's like, why are you calling it a victory? You just gave me a symbiote power-up. Why can't I just kick your ass? But yeah, the Punisher starts going on about how, while Spidey may not know this now, he's a part of the Hive now. And he begins monologuing that Spidey wasn't the only one targeted. And sure enough, we get a quick montage of other heroes around New York as they're being attacked by poisons and being infected with symbiotes. As basically the Punisher talks about how the poisons have done this across multiple worlds, across multiple universes. How from experience they've been able to pick out the best targets, and now they're zoning in on them. And the Punisher kind of just sees this as, well, tenderizing their meals, so to speak, just preparing them for the main course, which is not entirely inaccurate because, again, which is not entirely inaccurate because, well, they're bonding all the hosts that they want to consume with symbiotes. As such, while Spidey throughout all this is still trying to duke it out with the Punisher managed to hit a potential weak spot as he tells Spidey but he should probably use this time to make peace with his loved ones, like Aunt May or Mary Jane, and this causes Spidey to pause enough for the Punisher to just knock him aside and then walk away. And while Spidey wants to pursue, well, the Punisher left behind a few parting gifts, specifically more grenades, which obviously contain more symbiotes. Of course, these don't have the pins pulled out, so they're not going to explode, but Spidey knows better than to just leave a bunch of grenades lying around with symbiotes, so he realizes he has to prioritize grabbing them instead of following the Punisher. In the meantime, back in space, we cut to Venom and the time-displaced X-Men as they're returning to Earth, and Beast is alerting their version of Wolverine, named Jimmy, about the poisons and how they're heading to Earth, just pretty much giving them a heads up. Which of course continues the basics, but as Beast is giving Jimmy the lowdown, we see that Cyclops is still mourning the loss of Jean, and while Jimmy does take all the information and is willing to pass it along to Magneto, he quickly notices that Jean is not a part of the group, and when he asks questions, Cyclops just tells Jimmy, it's alright, don't just forget it, just relay the message, so to speak. Yeah. But yeah, from here, the story kind of starts jumping around a bit, because at this point, a lot of things are going on here. Not just the basic, so, I'm gonna try and do my best to keep it all lined up together, but don't be surprised if I lose my place every once in a while, so apologies in advance. So in the meantime, as all hell is breaking loose on Earth, we then cut to the Poison home base in space as we see the Poison versions of Doctor Doom and Thanos as they're just kind of going over what's going on and basically talking about how they've managed to get, and while they haven't gotten a 100% success rate, they have managed to acquire a good chunk of their targets. How everything's running smoothly, how the genetic manipulation of the symbiotes is going perfectly, how they can now bond with their hosts even better than before, yada yada yada, blah blah blah. The general gist is everything is going well, and soon they should have all the symbiote targets as they want. Of course, there are still some certain cases that they really do want to get, because not only are they here to collect more hosts that they can assimilate into their army, the Poisons are also after specific targets, mainly anomalies. The first of which is Carnage, because after all, back in Venomverse, Carnage proved to be, well, a real problem, as he was immune to the poison's ability to assimilate / consume, and when he actually went toe to toe with poisons, he greatly overpowered them. So basically, they want to find the version of Carnage in the main Marvel universe, and well, they want to consume him. Yeah, I'm getting tongue tied again. Point is, they want to consume Carnage, but unfortunately, at this point in time in the Marvel Universe, Carnage was not active, as I think I've mentioned this before, but yeah, Cletus Kasady didn't have the Carnage symbiote at this time, so he's basically locked up, and so the Poisons are doing everything they can to gather intel, and Thanos is actually 1 step ahead, as he actually managed to send a Poison version of Black Cat to Ravencroft Institute to try and see if they have Cletus Kasady at all, and sure enough, she does manage to find a lead, which she does report back to her superiors. However, it's here we also get a little hint at the one who's really calling the shots, because as Doctor Doom and Thanos are talking, well, they remark on Doctor Doom's previous failures in Venomverse, with Doctor Doom assuring Thanos that he's fine, he's learned from his mistakes, he's grown, and he can continue on, and the last thing he would want to do is disappoint her again. And we soon see who this her is. as behind the two almighty poisons, we see a figure standing there, surrounded by more little poisons. And, well, it looks like a ghostly image of Doctor Doom's mother. Although, as they talk about, although once we see that, Thanos tells Doctor Doom that he better have learned from his mistakes because he's easily replaceable. And Doctor Doom says, "Yes, I know, we're all replaceable. We're all replaceable, even you." And Thanos like, "Yes, I know. She lets me know." And it's then that we once again look back to the figure. Only she doesn't look like Doctor Doom's mommy anymore. She looks like Lady Death. Yeah, I'm just gonna spill the beans right now. This is the Poison Queen. She is the one truly in charge. Essentially, while the poison race operates on a hive mind, it's her mind that acts as the central thread. Every poison operates on her wants, her desires. They kind of use insect terms. They're all drones while she is the queen bee. And, well, what I kind of find interesting here is how, well, she utilizes the same psychic defense that the little poisons use whenever they encounter someone, whenever they try to lure in someone with a symbiote. And we see that showcased right here with Doctor Doom and Thanos. As when both of them look at her, they don't see the Poison Queen. They see someone that they want. They see someone that they want to listen to. In the case of Doctor Doom, he sees his mother, who, if you know anything about Doctor Doom, then you should know that his mother kind of is a big motivating factor for him. As if for those of you who don't know, Doctor Doom's mother has captured by Mephisto, and a good chunk of what made Doctor Doom become what he is because he was trying to find a way to rescue her from hell. And then likewise for Thanos, well, for those of you who haven't read Infinity Gauntlet, Thanos is a thing for Lady Death, and, well, he's willing to do anything for her. So of course, when he looks at the Poison Queen, he sees Lady Death. So I find that interesting, and it further showcases something that we've seen previously in Venomverse and Poison X, that the individual poisons who consume hosts and take on their appearance, there are still clearly shreds of that person in there. Not just like parts of their personality, but clearly some parts of them. The original them are still in there. We saw that with Spider-Man when he hesitated when he was fighting Spinneret. We saw that with Deadpool as he banked on his insanity being protected when he was consumed, which because of that insanity allowed him to retain his personality and so forth. But this kind of clinches it too, because if Doctor Doom and Thanos were so completely under the thrall of the poisons, then they shouldn't need to be deceived. They shouldn't need to look at the Poison Queen and be told this is someone you really want to protect. They should just bow to her, no questions asked. But the fact that the Poison Queen is putting up this psychic defense and making both of these two essentially drones see someone that they want to serve, in this case, for Doctor Doom it's his mother and for Thanos it's Lady Death, it showcases that the original personality is still under there. And to help make them more subservient, she makes herself look like someone that they want to protect, that they want to preserve, that they want to not disappoint. It's, in a way, kind of fucked up, and it does again it kind of makes this even sad, and it kind of makes the whole poison thing even sadder, because essentially when a person is consumed and assimilated, it shows that that essentially to make the bits of themselves that are still in there more compliant, the queen the queen just makes them believe that what they're doing is truly right, that they need to serve her to the best of their abilities, and it's really creepy. It's very creepy and very fucked up. And when you see, and it's very clearly showcased, and it's showcased well when you see the psychic images of Doom's mom and Lady Death as the forms shift depending on whose perspective we're seeing her from. I love that. It's great. But anyway, enough of the bad guys. Let's go back to Earth. back to Earth. And, well, since we're still talking about the poisons, we might as well check back in on them. So basically, after Black Cat gave her intel about where Cletus Cassidy was, Thanos wound up sending another strike team down to try and get Cletus out. In this case, the strike team consisted of, I think, Omega Red, Lady Deathstrike, and Morbius, of course, all poison versions of the characters, who immediately break into Ravencroft, and after killing a good chunk of the staff, they do manage to find Cletus Cassidy locked up, and of course, they can tell he doesn't have his symbiote. So they immediately think, perfect, we can take him, and Cletus Cassidy is still his his cheerful psychotic self, so he immediately starts threatening them, which just makes them want him more. In the meantime, back with the other heroes of the Marvel Universe, Spider-Man has lost the Punisher. He's grabbed the grenades, but sadly the poison Punisher has escaped, so Spidey now has no idea what to do. Of course, however, he decides that if he does want to keep going, there's one thing he has to do first. Get rid of the symbiote. Because after all, he's dealt with symbiotes before, he's gone down that slippery slope, he doesn't want to do it again, so he needs to just ditch this thing as soon as possible. So as such, the first thing, of course, he wants to try and do the strategy. He wants to do the same thing to this symbiote that he did to the Venom symbiote, i.e., smack it, expose it to loud noise via a church bell and force it off. So he managed, as such, he goes to, I think, Our Lady of Saints Church, and while he does tell the symbiote no hard feet, this is nothing personal, I just have a thing against aliens trying to being forcibly bound to me, he immediately just puts the grenades of symbiote goo aside, and then immediately just punches the bell. And sure enough, the loud noise does have an effect on the symbiote, as Peter just recoils in pain and the symbiote looks like it's writhing on him. However, it doesn't come off. In fact, it just seems to hold on tight, which even confuses Spider-Man. Now, from this point, the comic ends up cutting away to another storyline, but when we cut back to Spidey, it's clear that I think he tried to use the bell a few more times, but no matter how hard he tried, his symbiote wouldn't come off, which confuses him. Of course, Peter can't communicate with his symbiote, but he can tell that the loud noise hurt it. That he could hear it screaming in his head, he could feel its pain, so why isn't it ditching him? And that's when Peter starts realizing something. It can't. His symbiote is incapable of leaving him. Something has been done to it to ensure that no matter what happens, it won't come off, and that even if the symbiote wanted to leave Peter, it couldn't. So yeah, this is a lot more serious than we realize. However, as Peter starts coming to this revelation, he sees something kind of going on in the city, and sure enough, when he looks out to the city, he sees the time-displaced X-Men ship as it comes landing in New York, or more specifically, comes crashing in New York. Yeah, basically with all the spacefaring that team of X-Men was doing, well, their ship the ship is still kind of dealing with the repairs, so upon re-entry, it lost control and is now about to crash down to a populated area. And so sure enough, with the ship crashing down, heroes immediately jump into the fray, as Thor and Hercules, while still confused about their new attire, realize we have to go save the people and chase after. And of course, Spidey, seeing more symbiote-infused heroes, immediately just chases after them, supposedly leaving the symbiote grenades right there in the church for anyone to find. So that's fun. And but as that's going on, I'm going to talk about another part of the story, specifically back with the X-Men. Yeah, so basically as things continued going crazy with the poisons around New York, yeah, a bunch of heroes started realizing, okay, something's clearly going on here, so we need to investigate. And we see one of those heroes as he's in the middle of his investigation. Specifically, Captain America, as he goes to the X-Mansion and begins talking to Kitty Pryde and the X-Men about the Poison X-Force. And yeah, Kitty Pryde does explain to Cap, they were pretty much decimated. They came in, hit them hard, and if they wanted to, they could have easily taken down the X-Mansion. But yet, all of their bullets, all they did was just infect the X-Men with symbiotes, which even Kitty's like, why would they do that? Well, it's for the same reason that Spider-Man questions it. Why would they give them power-ups? And of course, at this point, you have to remember that the heroes of the Marvel Universe have no idea who the Poisons are. So basically, from their perspective, they just fought what looked like a bunch of weirdos that kind of sort of resemble people they know. And of course, Wolverine is able to quickly tell right away that they are clearly not of this world, since one member member of the Poison X-Force was a Wolverine. So clearly some interdimensional shenanigans is going on, and whatever's happening, they need to keep an eye out for it. But as that's going on, we cut back to Thor and Hercules as they manage to catch the X-Men ship, and thanks to their enhanced symbiote abilities, they are able to slow the ship's descent. With Thor flying under it and using her immense strength to hold it in place, while Hercules lands on top and manages to throw out a few symbiote tendrils to try and hold it in. With Spider-Man, while Hercules is like, oh, maybe this isn't so bad. These suits come with some advantages. Spidey does pop in and say, you might want to pack that in because these things also come with their fair share of problems too. However, unfortunately, Hercules and Thor's efforts don't exactly pay off that well, as the ship still continues to crash. But thankfully, some help comes from an unexpected place. Magneto, who, as I explained before when I talked about X-Men Blue, is the one that's currently in charge of this team of X-Men, so of course he wants to make sure his team, as well as the ship, are safe. So he manages to use the magnetic powers to safely lower the ship. As such, Thor, Hercules, and Spider-Man go and meet with Magneto, and Spidey's able to realize that it probably isn't a coincidence that as all this symbiote shit is going down, that this ship is suddenly starting to crash. And Magneto does confirm, yeah, things are going crazy, and if he wants answers, then he needs to talk to the people on that ship. And sure enough, Venom and the X-Men do get out the ship, and the instant Spidey sees Venom, any form of coherent thought just flies right out of his head, as he immediately just starts yelling at Venom and like, Venom, of course you're involved in this. What did you do this time? Which is not an unfair response considering his history with Venom, but I'm just gonna say this right now. When it comes to Spider-Man and the symbiotes in the story, he's kind of an ass. I'll talk about that more as the story goes along, but put simply, he immediately is accusatory towards Venom, and Venom, of course, is not happy to see Spidey either, but he does explain that he didn't come here to start a fight. He actually did come back to Earth with the X-Men because he wanted to warn the superheroes to stay away from the symbiotes. And sure enough, as that happens, we then cut back to the poison ship as we check back in with Doom and Thanos as they talk about how the team that Thanos sent down were able to catch Cletus Cassidy, and through exposition they explain that when Cletus came back, at first he seemed initially giddy to join these guys and be a part of them, but apparently they encountered some problems. While Cletus Cassidy does not have the Carnage symbiote right now, well, there are still traces of it in his bloodstream, as a whole thing with Cletus and the Carnage symbiote was that it didn't bond with him like other symbiotes did. It quite literally jumped into an open wound on his arm and bonded with Cletus via his bloodstream. It's a huge reason why the Carnage symbiote is red. So while Cletus may not have the symbiote right now, there's still enough of it in his veins that, but when the poisons attempted to bond Cletus to a symbiote, there were problems. Basically, the bits of his old symbiote are resisting the new ones. So it's basically a matter of trying to purge the old bits of trying to purge the Carnage, what's left of the Carnage symbiote out of Cletus' systems, so they can properly force another symbiote on him. And sure enough, they talk about how once that process has finished, what was once probably one of their greatest threats will soon become one of their greatest assets. And sure enough, the comic ends as we see Thanos and Doom looking into the room where they're experimenting on it. As we see Cletus Cassidy strapped to a chair, screaming in pain as a symbiote is attempting to try and bond with him. So, yeah. All right. So my thoughts on issue 1. I think it's actually a good beginning. From the outset, it really does showcase just how much of a problem the poisons are in the Marvel Universe. While all the storylines can kind of become a little cluttered, well, I'm just going to say this right now. If you read Event Comics, this type of storytelling is nothing new. And quite frankly, when you kind of showcase all the different people that are being affected by this threat, it kind of showcases the true scope of what they're dealing with. And what I do like is that by having so many heroes get targeted by the poisons, it shows just how coordinated they are. And I love the designs for the Venomized superheroes when they're all bonded with their own personal symbiotes, of course the symbiotes do their best to kind of match whoever they bond with. And as I showcased with Kitty's X-Men, they all still look pretty good, and it's consistent throughout the story. For people who have previously bonded with symbiotes, then their symbiote looks don't look any different than what you expect. Like, once again, going back to Spider-Man, when he's forced to bond with a symbiote, he's back to just wearing the black suit, white spider, all black. It just looks like what you'd expect from him. And so likewise for Spidey, it's just like wearing a new suit. Although he he knows well what would happen if he just keeps this thing on, because, symbiotes tend to want to try and vie for control. So of course he's not exactly enjoying being bonded to one of these things again. But with that said, going back to what I initially liked, by showcasing how many people are being affected, by showcasing all the heroes as they're being ambushed by the poisons and all of them getting symbiotes forced onto them, it showcases that this is very much a problem, because the poisons are not just some random team of bad guys. They are coordinated, they are smart, and they are obvious, and because they're trying to get the strongest hosts possible to assimilate into their army, they are targeting specific people and trying to arm them with symbiotes. And basically, from what I can tell, they're banking on these people's innate cluelessness with poisons to allow them to do that. Because here's the thing: when you're attacked by a bunch of weird, bony weirdos who resemble people who instead of killing you, just start bonding you with a bunch of alien slime balls that make you stronger and faster, your response is going to be obvious confusion. Because they clearly have hostile intent, but why then would they give you a power-up? Why would they bond you with something that does everything, that once it's bonded with you, makes you stronger, faster, and just makes you improved in every sense of the word? It raises a bunch of questions. Now, we, the readers, know what the answers to those questions are, since, like I said, Venomized is a sequel to Venomverse. So, we know. So if you've read Venomized, then there's a good chance that you probably have read Venomverse as well. So you know from right off the bat that the whole reason the poisons are doing this is because they plan to assimilate these heroes later. So like the Punisher said, this is just basically like they're preparing the meal, so to speak. They're just selecting who they want to be a part of their hive. In a way, so from a meta sense, we know what's going on, but I love the reactions the heroes have to this. They try and piece it together. And like I said, by showcasing how many different heroes are being targeted by the poisons, it sets up right away just how bad these guys are, as they're very much coordinated and know who to go after. So it very much showcases just the scope of it and just how organized the poisons are. That they aren't just some baddies that you can hit hard enough until they fall down. They are very much a coordinated force, and they have an end goal in mind. And sadly, because the heroes have no experience with them, they have no idea what that end goal is, and thus are trying to scramble for any information they can from whatever resource they can, i.e., anybody who has been attacked by the poisons and was bonded with a symbiote. So, again, I dig that. I like how that goes. And I like the way that the story kind of develops and showcases how the poisons are setting this plan in motion as opposed to Venomverse. In Venomverse, their plan was clearly just that their plan was to just bring the host to them. And so here we know the plan is for them to just make their own hosts. But what I like in that regard is that the poisons are essentially taking any advantage they can to try and make sure that nobody can run away. We saw that with Spider-Man when he attempted to force his symbiote off, as whatever way that the poisons are modifying the symbiotes, it makes it so that once they bond with the host, they don't just come off anymore. Because while we know that symbiotes tend to be clingy with their hosts, they have a breaking point, a threshold that once crossed will force a symbiote off. Maybe the host's life will be in danger. Maybe the symbiote itself is exposed to something that weakens the bond enough that it can't sustain it. Or maybe the symbiote just says, fuck this guy, and just decides to leave of its own volition. Either way, regardless of the answers, a symbiote can leave someone if the right pressure is applied. But as we saw with Spider-Man, he just continued banging on a church bell, and regardless of how much in pain his symbiote was, it didn't leave him. And that's because it couldn't leave him. So with that knowledge in mind, it makes it clear the poisons really are playing for keeps here, and they want to make sure that if they have you marked for assimilation, that you won't be able to get away. Once they have you, your only choice is to fight or run, and both are not very beneficial. As fighting, will essentially make you an easier target for them to assimilate, and running, well, that's not good either, because the poisons are going to do everything they can to hunt you down, and since their targets are primarily superheroes, well, imagine what a bunch of superpowered aliens who want to assimilate you are going to do to get your attention. Spoilers, I don't think it's going to be kind. So, I like the steps we see taken there, especially with seeing the poisons trying to be even more proactive in ensuring their victory this time around. And that, of course, means that they're also trying to learn from past mistakes. And we see that with the poisons as they go after Cletus Cassidy, because going back to Venomverse, Carnage was a major threat to the poisons in that story. So what I like here is that they're essentially going, okay, this guy fucked our shit up the last time we encounter him, or the last time we encountered a version of him, so maybe this time when we go to this universe, we should probably try and get him to our side. And sure enough, we see that right off the bat as we see the poisons immediately hunt for Cletus Cassidy and kidnap him and whisk him away to their ship with the intent of forcing a different symbiote on him. Because after all, the Carnage symbiote is immune to the assimilation process of the poisons, so odds are, if they want to get Carnage on their side, then they need the original host body, plus any other symbiote they can find, because, well, Cletus Cassidy is Cletus Cassidy, and he's going to be crazy no matter which symbiote they go with. So odds are, if they get the right symbiote on him, they're going to get that crazy on their side too. So again, that's smart thinking. I do kind of like that. I like that they're actually trying to take that step forward, and kind of going back to the whole progression of the villains thing. I like that we see more hints of how the poison's structure works. Of course, the most domineering personalities are the ones in charge, i.e. Doctor Doom and Thanos, who even in the main Marvel Universe are some of the biggest bads that you can encounter. So yes, while these may be alternate versions of them who have been consumed by the Hive, enough of their original hosts' personalities are still there that they're still the ones calling the shots, even here. So while it's clear that it's clear it's not completely them, because let's be honest, if the real Doctor Doom was forced to join these guys, he'd be doing everything in his power to make sure he was the top dog. He would serve no one. Doom serves no man. And even if he encountered fucking Thanos, he would not bow to him. He would not listen to a word he said. Although, to be fair, in this context, they're equals in terms of power. But still, either way, it's clear that enough of their personalities has been subsumed that they are still willing to play ball. But enough of the originals are still there that they're still very much the guys that you need to bend a knee to if you want to stay alive. And I like how that, and I like that they're the one, and I like how while they may be high on the totem pole, they're still not the ones at the top. Of course, they honor once again Ghost of the Queen, and I love the little hint we see of her in this comic. We don't see what she really looks like, but we immediately get a sense that we immediately get a sense of just how much of a domineering factor she is among the poison hierarchy, because since the only bit of appearance we see of her is the psychic manifestation that she puts up for Doom and Thanos, it makes her almost look ghostly, like this shadow waiting in the wings. And the fact that, and with her being the one that calls the shots, it makes you kind of start, it gives you the chills in a way, because as we've seen with the poison psychic defense, not only does when they throw that up, does it make whoever sees them see the person they want to see, but they genuinely believe that that's the person, that it's the real person. Going back to Venomverse, despite the fact that a good chunk of the Venoms there knew about the poison's whole put up the psychic defense thing, all of them fell for it. The only exception being Doctor Strange, and he only got away with it because of his magics, being able to show the truth to him. But for every other Venom, whenever they saw a poison throw up their psychic whatchamacallit, they fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. They genuinely believed that the person they were seeing was the real person. And so I'm guessing it's a similar case with the Queen. And so the fact that she's able to use this thing to make Doom and Thanos subservient to her, by making them both believe that she is the one person in the world that they would want to serve. And like I said, Doom's mother for Doctor Doom, Lady Death for Thanos. It's actually really creepy, and because you don't see what she really looks like, yeah, like I said, it gives her an almost ethereal presence, like something waiting in the background. And that's considering that she was waiting in the background, it kind of gives even more chills. And the fact that she didn't say anything at all and just kind of sat back and watched while Doom and Thanos did everything, it definitely gives it definitely gives you a bit of an impression at just how much of just how powerful she truly is in that regard. So again, I dig it. So I'm trying to think what else is there. We still get some leftover drama from Poison X with the X-Men, as when the time displaced X-Men come back to Earth and try warning everyone, hey, the poisons are here. We still get the stuff with Cyclops as he's still mourning Jean Grey, which I still think is nice, and still think it's nice. It's only a little bit, but I like that it's still carried over, and we do see Cyclops still trying his best to stay strong despite the obvious turmoil that he's in. So again, like that sort of thing. And I do like how the story, and I do like how, and like I said, it's still cool seeing the heroes try and do whatever they can to try and wrap their heads about what's going on, while also trying to figure out who their enemy is, while also trying to figure out who their enemy is and what their end goal is. So again, it's a good start. It's packed with action. Immediately sets the stakes, shows how grand of scope this whole ordeal is, as we see how many heroes get attacked by the poisons here. And again, we see more of how the poisons we see the links the poisons are doing to try and make sure their plan is successful this time around. It's some good stuff. We get more hints at the poison hierarchy with the Queen, and the final shot of seeing Cletus Cassidy as he screams in pain as they try to force a symbiote on him is a nice way of showcasing that there's gonna be that shit's still going down. That shit's really going down if they manage to get him on their side, well then things are gonna get really bad. So again, good stuff. I like it. I like it. It's really good stuff. So yeah, on the whole, still really good. Still a good comic. So yeah, I think that's all I really have to say. I hope you enjoyed the video. I thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on Thursday as we look at issue 2 and see more of how the heroes try and deal with the poison threat. So till then, I hope you have a good evening. I apologize if it looks like I'm sweating. It's very hot right now, but I hope to see you on Thursday, and as always, take care.